If you have just been diagnosed with cancer or a loved one has just received a diagnosis, this video is for you. We are sharing from our experience with Rachel's stage 4 colon cancer diagnosis, and we've taken that experience and boiled it down to a simple checklist of our recommendations for the actions you should take in those first couple weeks after a terrible cancer diagnosis. Let's get into it. All right, step one after receiving a cancer diagnosis is to take a breath and don't freak out. That might feel patronizing, but there's a lot of science behind taking a second. This is not a death sentence. No matter what it feels like, this is not a death sentence. This is information, this is difficulty, this is your path changing, but it does not have to steal your hope. This can feel really overwhelming. Often in these first few weeks, it's going to feel like you're drinking from a fire hose and like you just can't go fast enough. And so again, taking a second to breathe, to process is important before trying to make any hectic decisions. The best thing you can do is respond, not react. What I mean is process what's happening and don't act out of a place of chaos, but out of a place of calm resolve. That little pause can make the difference between you making decisions and life deciding things for you. All right, step number 2 for a new cancer diagnosis. Find someone who can help you. Find someone who can help you. Your mind is reeling, and it's going to be really difficult to focus and make the decisions you need to make for the next few days and weeks at least. Surrounding yourself with level-headed people, this can be a family member, a friend, even a doctor that you trust, to help you navigate the conversations that you need to have, to go to doctor's appointments with you, to help take notes and help you think through the decision you need to make is going to be so important. Keep in mind that the person that you choose, depending on how close they are to you, may also be going through a difficult time with your diagnosis. It's very different, and I don't want to equate at all the two experiences, but they are also processing the scariness of the situation that their loved one, you, is in. And so be gracious, particularly if the person that you're really entrusting is a spouse or a parent or a child, one of your adult children. Just know that they are also processing things and may need some time as well. And so being gracious as best you can in that is going to be really important. But again, it is so important to have someone that can go through this journey with you in these next few weeks to help you make wise decisions. All right, step number 3 for a new cancer diagnosis. Schedule at least 3 consultations with different doctors. By doctors, I mean cancer doctors, oncologists. 3 different consultations. You have to be your own best advocate in this fight against cancer. What that means is that you're going to meet with doctors who have specialties, who have types of cancers that they focus on or types of treatments that they focus on. But there's no doctor that focuses on your situation, your environment, your upbringing, your past experience. You are that expert. So it's so important that you have a team of people around you who are best at what they do and can help advise, because you're the one that's going to need to make some important decisions. The reason I say at least 3 different doctors is it's super important that the doctor that you work with most closely inspires hope, gives you true information, tells you the truth, doesn't beat around the bush, if news is hard, but is someone who is with you in your journey and can help you navigate by educating you on options and what your situation looks like. For us, the first doctor that we met with, that we were assigned through insurance for Rachel's, this was like a week after Rachel's diagnosis. I'm not speaking ill of the doctor, just the conversation that we had was the most hope-stealing conversation we had had to that point. There was a lot about it that felt like Rachel was a number. She was a statistic, and that the doctor didn't see a unique aspect to Rachel being a unique person with a unique makeup and structure and health situation, but that we were going to throw the textbook at Rachel and see what happens, because statistically, that's what helps the most people. And there was no real conversation about who Rachel was and what Rachel wanted, and what things in a holistic approach we can take. And so we walked out of that conversation so discouraged. Essentially, they said, it's a 50-50 shot whether chemo will work, but we'll give it a try and we'll see if we can buy you some more time, was essentially the conversation. And we walked out saying, that might be the truth. But if it is, we want to hear it from someone who we feel is on our side and is going with us through this. And so we kept looking and met with many more doctors. And we did land with a doctor who we believed inspired hope in us. Not false hope, not lying to us. They spoke the hard truth. This doctor who we've been working with, he was the one who said, without treatment, you have maybe 6 months. That was a gut punch, but it was from someone who we trusted and who had built trust with us and worked with us to educate us. And so we had a rapport and a trust with him, and we're able to take that information and make decisions based on it. So that was so important for us to have that relationship with that oncologist. If you don't know where to start, if you know anybody who's had cancer, ask them. Ask them about their doctor. Who did they like? Who did they not like? That can be a really helpful resource. You can look for doctors who specialize in your cancer. That's another way that you can try to identify who you should be meeting with. Even if you can't go with them, who they recommend, because of insurance or things like that, you can still have a consultation and get some ideas, and maybe even ask the doctor that you end up working with maybe to speak with them, because they specialize in your type of cancer. And so that's a way that you can build a team without having to receive treatment, which can be really expensive if insurance isn't covering it, from many different doctors. The other thing that I'll say is, out of those 3 meetings, I really recommend having at least one of those be a naturopath or an integrative oncologist. Someone who can advise and help you see and understand the science of dietary changes, lifestyle changes that are complementary to whatever traditional Western medical approach they're recommending, can be super helpful. Because if anything, it's something that you can do. It's a way you can feel like you are a little bit more in control of your health and not just at the whim of what doctors are doing that you may not even understand. And so that can be really, really useful in inspiring hope and giving us meaningful information to make decisions. Next week's video, we're going to focus on 10 questions for your oncologist. So stay tuned for that, but that will help when you're trying to schedule these consultations. So if you're watching this after the fact, we'll put a link right here to that video, and you can jump over there as soon as you're done here, or do it right now. I don't care if you finish this or not. But you can get that list of 10 questions for your oncologist. All right, item number 4 on the checklist for a new cancer diagnosis. This can take a little bit of time, but is really important. Make a list of your life habits in the areas of diet, sleep, supplements, exercise, stress, and spirituality. Those 6 things. Diet, sleep, supplements, exercise, stress, and spirituality. The reason I say make a list and not make changes or improve It's super important to, in these first few weeks, at least understand a baseline of where you're at in these areas. So sit down and fairly evaluate your habits that brought you to this place. The things in your life that can be affecting your health, your immune system, and can be an influence in your fight in the future against cancer. But you can't do that, you can't make those changes until you take the time to breathe, process, and think about your decisions, your life decisions that have brought you to where you are today, so that you can evaluate what needs to change. So in this list, make 2 columns. On the left, write your current state. How would you describe your diet today? How would you describe how you think about food as it relates to your diet? How would you describe your sleep habits? Are there any vitamins or supplements that you have historically normally taken? What's your exercise routine look like or not look like? How would you rate your stress level? Do you have a stressful job? Are you a single mom at home with kids? Have you been fighting with health symptoms that have caused stress that now has resulted in a cancer diagnosis, but maybe for months or years you didn't know what was going on and it was affecting you and causing stress? And then ultimately, spirituality. How would you evaluate yourself in terms of the time that you spend, the ways that you think about spirituality? Again, we've talked about, for Rachel and I, our Christian faith has been so important to us, and was something that really just got stronger in really the moments after our diagnosis, as it was something that we leaned into and that became an anchor for us. Our faith in a God who loves us and who has suffered, not exactly like this, but has suffered in unimaginable ways and can empathize with us. And ultimately, our view of eternity and how life here on earth is just a drop in a bucket. And so that gave us hope outside of even our cancer fight, but just understanding that life is temporary, but that we can have hope in a future. And so that gave us something to cling to. And so evaluate your spirituality. Where are you at? When was the last time that you really considered your spiritual condition and health? So you're putting that in that left-hand column. So then in the right-hand column, once you've evaluated where you're at, start brainstorming what you could do to improve in each of those areas. What changes could you make in diet, in sleep, supplements, exercise, stress, and your spiritual life? And this should just be a creative space. You shouldn't feel overwhelmed by the need to make a ton of changes all at once. This is just to get some ideas flowing in these first few weeks, so that as you're trying to meet with doctors and getting treatment plan figured out and things, you can also be making some meaningful changes that make you feel a little more empowered during this really, really difficult, stressful time. If you don't have an answer in one of those columns, that's a perfect thing to talk with a doctor about. Talk with a friend, talk with a spiritual advisor, someone that you respect and look up to. Get their advice on what they would recommend in that area if you really kind of don't know what to change. But it is critical to consider what reasonable changes you can make to kickstart your own recovery. Regardless of what doctors are going to do, you can take some semblance of control to enact change in your body, right? That's the biggest thing that we want to instill in you. And ultimately, your mental health and your spiritual health will be what sustains you during your lack of physical health. And so establishing that early is so important. So that starts with being honest and establishing a baseline. So you're going to make a list. All right, the fifth and final step in this cancer diagnosis checklist is to get excited about making changes in your life to shift the tide of your health. Okay, again, this might feel trite, but hear me out. Your cancer developed through a million little moments and decisions that allowed it to grow. A million moments over the last months, years, decades that have allowed your immune system, that have allowed your body to develop what we now recognize as cancer. What this means and why this is good information is that from this moment forward, you have a million moments and decisions ahead of you to change that direction, to change the environment that allowed the cancer to grow. You now have many, many opportunities to make changes in those exact areas that can help turn the tide. That is exciting. It should be exciting that this is something that you can make meaningful changes in. The reason this last step is so important is that your health ties so closely with your emotional, mental, and spiritual health. Your attitude and outlook for the future has a tangible effect on your physical health. Kelly Turner, in her book, Radical Remission, identified 9 key common factors she's a researcher, and she found 9 key factors across many diverse individuals who overcame the odds with their diagnosis. So she studied and interviewed and learned from a lot of people who went through what's called radical remission, which is they were in a very dire situation with cancer and really beat the odds and went into full remission. And so these 9 key factors, 7 of the 9 relate to mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So 7 of the 9 have nothing, quote unquote, to do with physical health. That's why I say it's so important for you to take a second and find ways to get excited about the future. That's really hard. You're in a really crummy situation that is so stressful and so difficult. We were there 3 years ago with Rachel. But right now is when it's so important to see hope in the future, to see health in my mental state, my emotional state, and most importantly, in my spiritual state. So that is why it is so important to take a moment and get excited about the changes that you're going to make to shift the tide of your health. All right, and that is it. That is going to exhaust you in your first few weeks as you walk through this, but it will also lay a foundation for you to build upon as you start getting your legs under you, as it starts to feel less like a fire hose and more like a trickle of information that you're trying to drink in. This is a foundation that will allow you to build something meaningful on top of it to turn the tide of your health. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below or reach out to us on our website. We would love to talk. But otherwise, be healthy, be blessed, and we'll talk to you soon.